live. Hi, I'm Chris Leatham here with The Economy and You here at Think Tech Hawaii. And today we have a guest and another person who's running for office. This time is Kathryn Henski from Senate House District 22, which is, of course, our beautiful Waikiki. Welcome to Think Tech Hawaii, Kathryn.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming today. We were at a meeting last night, one of your campaign fundraisers, and how's it going?
It is fantastic. I'm so excited and I'm so glad that you would invite me on the program after last night. We had a wonderful speaker, Robert Graham from Arizona, and he's a very good motivational speaker and very successful.
And I thought he was quite insightful as well.
Yes.
You brought up a lot of interesting issues and things that that I think may actually help your campaign in a significant way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, this is your first time running for office?
No, I ran for office in 1978 in was then City Council District 5, which was the Diamond Head and Waikiki district at the time.
And what compelled you to run for office again?
Well, I had a long break from personally running. I've been active in politics ever since then. But we were raising 35 medically fragile foster children.
35?
35 over a 10...
Not at all at once.
Oh, no. No. But we did raise 35 over a 10-year period of time. And 2 of the children we've adopted, and they are doing absolutely great. And we're very proud of them. Robin graduated from Kaimoki High School, and she also represented the state of Hawaii in the National Triathlon, and her very first one, and qualified to go to the World Championship.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yes.
great. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our son Jacob plays a wild viola, and he's another miracle story.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
Thank you. So the reason I chose to run partly is because of my children, and because I believe that Waikiki, Ala Moana, and part of Kaka'ako is not being represented correctly, and I'd like to see that changed.
So what would you like to, I know homelessness is an issue that it just seems to be a never-ending problem in the Waikiki area. Although it seems like it gets better and then it sort of gets worse again, and then we seem to come up with some solutions, and then it's sometimes, to me, it feels like it's like when you run your hand through water, and the water moves out of the way, and then slowly it just works its way back in again.
Well, and you're correct, Chris. You're absolutely correct. I had moved to Alaska for a few years, and I had a youth hostel in Alaska. And at the end of the very first year, a young man came to me and he said, I need to get back home. And the part of Alaska I was living in is Ketchikan, which is an island like Hawaii, only accessible by plane or boat. And so I put him up along with the 19 other people that I had downstairs. And I found out he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Fisherman gave me a fish. I cut it up, cooked it with a pot of rice, took it downstairs, and I found out that there were other patrons in my shelter, or my hostel, not shelter, that hadn't eaten. And so it became kind of, it was
so you sort of became Mother Teresa to all these, these kids.
I wouldn't go that far, but older men did call me mom. Yeah, that's true. And I successfully put 3,000 men, women, and children in homes, employed them, and fed them, and sheltered them until they could get reestablished. It was self-funded. And to come back to Hawaii and find that the homeless situation is so bad here and not being taken care of just sickened me.
Yeah, it's a tough fight because there's a lot of labeling that goes on with homelessness. There are some that are probably undesirable. There's some with substance abuse issues. There are some that are migrants that have come here from other places.
You're right.
We have a myriad of issues, and half of our population, homeless population, are over 65. And so we have a large elderly population.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And hidden, and a lot of them are hidden. Some of them are obvious, but there are a great deal of them that aren't not visible, or you wouldn't know that they're homeless.
Well, Chris, what worries me is there are so many children that are being raised in these camp-out sort of issues and the conditions that really aren't right for children.
Yeah.
And it's just a self-feeding thing. As they grow up, what are they going to know? They're not going to know how to live with people. They're embarrassed because when they go to school, people will say, hey, can we come over to your house and play? They don't have any place for these children to come and visit them.
Yeah.
And the seniors, I think a lot of it is because in the old days in Hawaii, the elders were respected. And I think they still are.
And they were multi-generational households as well, right?
Correct.
Culturally,
Correct.
yeah.
Yes. And now it seems that younger people aren't taking on the responsibility they should be taking on, which is taking care of your kapuna and keeping them at home with you. That's really important to me. And we need to fix the homeless problem, to fix the elder problem, the children, and the safety of the community.
Well, you know, taking care of people that are homeless or houseless is an expensive proposition.
It is.
One of the initiatives called Housing First was a proposition that was started, I believe, in Salt Lake City, Utah. The difference between their Housing First program and ours, of course, is that in Salt Lake City, Utah, there's more housing available.
Right.
Fundamentally, we have a problem with a lack of housing. You know, we have a lack of options. According to Senator Chen Oakland, in a conversation I had with her last year, we're about over 60,000 units shy of where we need to be to meet our current demand based on our current population. Well, that's a big bite.
I agree with you, Chris. The problem that I have with that is that if you were to look at the number of Section 8 houses that are empty, and I believe Allison Blair wrote an article, Civil Beat, last year, and I quote her at about 600 empty units. And the reason for that is that they cannot get the units fixed. It may be something as simple as a plumbing problem or some windows, and it's unacceptable that those units are out there without being utilized. That's wrong. That's number one.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I think we need to address quickly. The other thing is we need to get rid of the stigma of politics and homelessness. We need to have somebody who can coordinate it, forget all this permitting, and get it going and get it happening. For instance, there is a shed down at the waterfront that would house 60 people. And the reason they haven't started the construction is because of a sewer pump problem. Now,
would that create well, of course, anything related to sewer, you're concerned about odor, right? You can have an odorific issue.
Well, and health issues.
Yes, of course.
But there are units, portable units, or units that can be built outside of that facility that would contain showers, washing and drying areas, and bathroom facilities. Okay, and Trevor Ozawa came back to our district and he wanted to bring some of those units over here. And he has not met with much success. But I pointed out to the current representative in our district that if he were to implement that particular idea, they could go forward with the construction of the 60 areas in the shed.
Well, there's a lot of, and of course, I'm sure one of the challenges is if you're in office is the NIMBY factor, right? Not in my backyard.
That's right.
Yeah, and of course, nobody wants to have a homeless encampment in their backyard.
Right.
So is that maybe one of the reasons is there's pushback from the community?
I think it's a yin and yang situation. The public wants the homeless gone, and you're right, not in my backyard. But we have to come to some kind of compromise. We're going to have to come to some kind of solution where we can make these things happen together. And there are places right now that have been purchased but aren't open. Mayor Caldwell purchased a building and it's been sitting there for a year. I don't know what's going on with that.
You know, it is an island. We're not just Honolulu, right?
Right.
I mean, and do we have to build all of our homeless solutions in Honolulu proper.
No, we don't.
Yeah, I mean, we have areas out in Kalaeloa. There are vacant houses, there's land that's fallow or sallow, I'm not quite sure what the proper word is there, but it's sitting empty. It's not being utilized.
Right.
We've got space in Waianae, we've got space in the middle of the island, Wahiwa area.
Sand Island.
Sand Island. It would seem to me that there are still areas where we could build and accommodate, build facilities to accommodate people. And of course, the benefit of that is that it's much more cost effective.
Correct.
To treat the people.
That's right.
Right? I mean,
Right.
to give them the services that they need, whether it's food stamps, whether it's, medical, meeting their medical needs and such. So it really is in our own best interest.
Yes.
To find housing solutions for
It
these
is.
folks.
And it's in their best interest because they don't have a home. And it's not because they don't want one. A lot of the people can't afford the rents.
Well, I've heard that statement, though. I've heard people say to me, well, Chris, they just like living out there. And I'm like, well, maybe. I like fishing, but I don't want to fish every day, It stops becoming fun after a while.
It becomes
right?
work.
Yeah, it becomes work. So, and nobody likes, and I watch as the homeless set up around 10 o'clock at night. You can watch them set up in their tents in front of Ala Moana Shopping Center, along that area. You'll also notice that if you go over by the airport, there are lots of people living under the bridges.
Yes.
And my sister would call these people bridge trolls. They're living under the bridges. So, I mean, and that's really, if you think about our visitor industry, that's probably not something that I'm going to be proud of, is to have my visitors watch, as they're driving into Waikiki, see people living under the bridges.
But now you brought it up. You said that you've heard before that they can't afford the rent. And what's your answer to that?
Well, I think we need to build, me personally, I would like to introduce legislation to build templated structures where, and I think we talked about this a little bit, you have sort of templated structures that are pre-approved by the DPP, Department of Permanent and Planning, that could be built more cheaply. And since they've been pre-approved, as long as developers follow those guidelines to build those facilities, that those, instead of taking 2 years to get approval, might take 2 months.
Yes,
which would reduce the cost.
That's exactly right.
That's right. And they could be built according to where sort of dorm-like structures of various designs to meet very specific needs of people that they would accommodate their particular issues.
Right. When I had my shelter, it was a dorm-like style. I could accommodate 20 men downstairs. I had 3 bedrooms upstairs where women and children would stay. So, yes, it can work. It does work. I know it.
Yes.
I know it so well that I was getting so much employment that the state sent over the unemployment officer with a bunch of books.
Okay.
And she said, Kathryn, you can't keep employing these people. No workman's comp, no nothing. I'm going, no, but they can eat every night.
That's right, that's right. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm Chris Leatham with The Economy and You. When we come back, we're going to talk about our environment.
Okay, I'm excited about it.
And so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Aloha.
Aloha, how you doing? Welcome to Hibachi Talk. Gordo de Texar here. We're here every Friday from 1 o'clock till about 1:45, and we talk tech with many, many great guests. I got Andrew, the security guy who helps me co-host, and I got Papi Chulo, who comes in once in a while to help us through the show. So please come join Hibachi Talk every Friday. Angus will be here too. So remember, like we say at the end of every show, how you doing?
Aloha, my name is Justine Espiritu, and I am the co-host of Hawaii Farmers Series. This is my co-host, Matthew Johnson, and we are live with you every Thursday at 4 p.m. at thinktechhawaii.com. And our show focuses on Hawaii's local food community. We feature not only the farmers that are producing our food, but we also feature the supporters and other folks involved in the community that are trying to promote local agriculture.
Okay, and we're back. Hi, I'm Chris Leatham with The Economy and You, and today's guest is Kathryn Henski she is a Republican candidate for House District 22.
Correct.
And Kathryn, now one of the other areas when we discussed earlier was your concerned about our environment. And I'm a bit of an environmentalist.
Okay.
Yes, Republicans can be environmentalists as well.
Yeah.
Despite what some people say. Yes, I am very, it's a big issue, it's a big concern for me. You know, I believe the earth is something that we have a responsibility to pass on to our children better, in a better condition than what we received it.
Absolutely.
You know, and your daughter is working in research as well?
Yes, well, last year, she was an intern with a program called Kupu, which I hope more people can learn about, and is strictly getting rid of invasive species, returning the natural species back to the islands. They had 325 young people just getting ready to graduate from high school. They screen them, they interview them, they take them from all islands, and they rebuild fish ponds, they clean up areas that nobody's ever attended
Can you
to.
please have them get rid of the koki frogs?
Well, I don't know, but I would love to have more people aware of Kupu.
Yes.
They're down at the net shed at Koala Basin, and they teach these kids all about traditional Hawaiian methods.
Which is great for the kids too, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's really great for
And
them.
51% of the interns there this last summer, 2015, would have been unemployed for the summer. So these kids, most of them go on to training or to college, which is what happened with my daughter. And she's studying marine biology. And because of her, I was able to attend a lecture recently. Dr. Ruth Gates from the UH has recently been awarded a $4 million grant.
Is she supposed? Does she want everybody to know about that? Because well, they do now, right?
They do now. If they didn't know before, they sure do now. Well, this was a very public speech that she gave, and it's about saving coral. Our coral, particularly in Waikiki, is over 50% dead. It's bleached out, and unless we can restore it, those reefs protect us from oncoming waves. And she has been very successful. She split her $4 million award with a partner down in Australia,
Where they're also having a lot of the same issues.
the Great Barrier Reef, yeah. And they're doing all kinds of fabulous experiments. And I think you mentioned,
Well, yeah, some of the interesting work that's being done is they're trying to create a super coral.
Right.
That can withstand the harsh changes in the water,
Right.
in terms of temperature and pH levels and
Right.
such. This is part of what's had an impact on coral's ability to continue to thrive. And so in our efforts to sort of apply a GMO technology, bad word, to coral, we're working to create a hardier strains of coral that will continue we replant back into the coral reefs again.
right. And they are replanting. They're currently replanting. And they're having some really nice success, Chris.
Yes, yeah.
They also cleaned up Kaneohe Bay. The sewage doesn't go back out into Kaneohe Bay. The fish are returning. The sharks are returning.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that the sharks are coming back. That really makes me feel better.
Well, it's part of the
That's right.
It's part of the revitalization
That's
of
right.
nature.
That's their turf.
That's right.
Yes.
And I think it's really important. And I think it's really, really important to Waikiki, Ala Moana area, because that's what's going to ensure the continuation of our beaches. And
Yes.
the water needs to be cleaned up. Part of it is the El Nino effect. We're having a problem with that. The water is very, very hot.
Yeah, well, that's, we have the amount of carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere today. We haven't had these levels for, according to some scientists, 10 million years.
Right.
And so we have an extraordinary amount of carbon dioxide that we are not unable to deal with. And this is part of the warming gases.
Well, yes, and the other thing is the amount of plastic that is in the ocean.
Yes.
And the pollutants. A 16-year-old young man from, I believe it's Denmark, had a great idea, and they've done it in Denmark, and it's just a half-moon shape of plastic which captures everything that's coming into shore. then it funnels it into a holding area, which then is picked up by a ship when it's accumulated enough garbage. And tremendous success of this.
Well, you know, there's they call it a floating island of plastic that is out in the middle. I believe it's in the south of the equator, somewhere in the Indian Ocean or somewhere out there. It's just sort of a big floating island of rubbish.
Yes.
And so, you know, we've got to figure out a way to clean it up. The problem is it's a big area, so maybe having structures that accumulate this stuff, and then and then having beacons attached to it, and then being able to go out there and pick it up. I think that's a brilliant plan.
Brilliant idea, and it's by a 16-year-old kid. So
you just never
great
know
for
where
youth.
Yes. You just never know where great ideas are going to come from. And so, you know, one of the other areas, of course, for Hawaii has been GMO. There's been a lot of arguments over the GMO. Of course, on the one hand, GMO, we have papayas, which are essentially, we exist today because of GMO. They would argue that this sort of change in genetic restructuring in order to produce hardier crops would take, through natural crossbreeding, would take, you know, 100 years longer or you know, 100 times longer to accomplish than they're doing with gene splicing today. What are your thoughts on the way they're handling this issue?
I wish I knew more about it, Chris. It's not something that's relative to Waikiki and Ala Moana, but I'm very much in favor of organic planting and organic fresh things that we have. I do know, however, that there are many crops that would not exist if it weren't for that GMO happening. So I have mixed feelings. I cannot give you a definitive answer.
You know, one of the things that I thought about is that just at least have disclosure. You know, if something is GMO, you should be willing to say, okay, this is GMO, and don't be afraid to say it. And I think there's some value and of course, one of the challenges, there is also some misinformation associated with what's gone on with GMO.
I think we have to be careful with cross splicing. I know my grandfather had an orchard up in Ohio, and he would take certain branches off of certain apple trees and cross them naturally and allow them to breed that way. I love that idea. I'm not crazy about some of the food we're eating nowadays. It doesn't taste like the food that I grew up with. It doesn't taste like tomatoes. It doesn't taste like apples. It tastes like
something else.
Cardboard. And I think the irony of it is that we were all organic in the beginning, because when you were, let's say 50 years ago, you went to the store, there weren't all these warnings and packagings and everything else that's going on now. And when you ate your food, you knew it was food.
Well, you know, when I was a little kid, we had a dairy farm, and the cows we would milk the cows, and the cows would make cow poo, and cow poo was mixed in, and it was used, and that was the primary source of fertilizer.
Right.
You know,
Us old farmers.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So you know, I see the value in doing things traditionally. You know, and one of the things in Hawaii that we talk about today is buy local. We talk about buying local foods that are grown here in Hawaii.
Yes.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful movement. It also ensures diversity of our crops.
Right.
And I think our farmers do a great job.
I think our farmers are great. I would like to see a store similar to Whole Food, but it just make it Hawaiian food. You know, all Hawaiian grown food. Nothing else gets in the door. And that way we support the farmers, we support the growers. I'd like to see that happen.
That's an interesting idea.
Why not?
Yeah, Kathryn, that's an interesting idea.
Why not?
Well, we have the farmers markets, which is great, but it'd be nice to be able to have maybe some you know, formalizing in that and make it easier for people to access.
Yes, as a matter of fact, my campaign manager, Melike Aloha Lindsay, is the one who has the farmers market on Saturday at Jefferson Elementary School. And it's a great place to go. But if you could every day go to a market and you know that product's going to be there and you know it's from Hawaii, not Mexico, not China, not wherever, but it's Hawaiian. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Another thing that I remember when I came here in 1975 is that
That was just like the other day, yeah.
oh, yeah. I'm so young. When I came in 1975, there were areas outside of Kapiolani Park that people could use for their gardens. And
That's right.
do you remember that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And people would grow fruit and vegetables if they didn't have any area for them to grow. I'd like to see part of the school grounds, which lay dormant and unused during the summer, I'd like to see people being allocated certain areas, break it up, and make it accessible to people like they had before.
You know, and one of the things I saw in San Francisco was rooftop farming. One of the things I have not seen here is people using and utilizing the rooftops.
Because of the homeowners association. They would not allow it. They're worried about the insurance. They're worried about accidents. If there's too much weight on the roof, then it goes through.
Yeah, I suppose, but couldn't those issues be effectively addressed? I mean, in terms of if you said, okay, this roof will tolerate a certain weight, safely will tolerate a certain amount of weight. You can do hydroponic gardening.
Right.
There's other types of gardening. There's even some gardening with just sort of the plants will just sort of.
Well, if you go on my Facebook,
Uh-huh.
my regular old Facebook.
Regular old Facebook
Right.
page. Okay.
And I have put up several different kinds of gardening that is successful in a very small area. And using about 1% of the water and not making a big mess, but producing. And if you just want to go look at it, you know, I'd suggest go look at my website. Yeah.
Well, now, how do they find, and that's on your Facebook or your
No,
website?
it's my Facebook. It's
Okay.
sorry. It's Kathryn Henski
Uh-huh.
on Facebook, and that's the kind of thing that I'd like to see happen again. I'd like to see
And-
local gardens for
And
people.
you know, here's the other thing. You know, I'd like to see us teaching our children, doing these types of things with our kids. You know, and this is a great parenting, sort of parent-child project, you know, for when you, as you're parenting your children
right.
and you're teaching them values. I think there's a lot of values gained from, you know, teaching them about farming, about growing crops and plants and such, because then they develop a respect for how much work goes into it and how
Yes.
easy it is to actually, you know, I understand the fragility
and
of
how
a plant.
much
Yeah.
better it tastes.
Yes.
I mean, the difference in taste is amazing, and I think that's really important. to
And there's a
teach.
certain satisfaction, you know, when you've done something like that, right?
And grandparents are a good one to do that.
That's right. That's right.
They love to
Yeah,
do something
yeah.
like that.
Well, we're going to take another break. When we come back, let's talk about aging in place, because, you know,
Oh,
this
yeah.
was one of my issues for my campaign, and I know it's an issue for you
Yes, it
as
is.
well. So I'm Chris Leatham here with The Economy and You, and we'll be right back. Aloha.
Aloha, this is Reg Baker, and I am the host of Business in Hawaii. We talk about positive stories of businesses in Hawaii, how they have been successful, and how they have overcome some of the obstacles that a lot of us encounter when we try to have a business here. And believe it or not, there are a number of positive stories here, and we want to talk to all of you. So we broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock. And it rebroadcasts again on Olelo Channel 54. So I sure hope to see you next time. Please tune in on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on Think Tech Hawaii. I hope that you will tune in and watch the show. It is inspiring and uplifting and educational. Also, we talk with artists of all different ilk. We talk with them about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, most dear to my heart, why they do it. And it never ceases to be fascinating when you get the answer to that question. I hope you'll join us on Center Stage, 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoons. Aloha.
Thank you.
And we're back. Hi, I'm Chris Leatham with The Economy and You. Today's guest is Kathryn Henski. She is the Republican House candidate for District 22. And so, you know, we were talking a little bit earlier about homelessness, but one of the other issues is aging in place. It's allowing people to stay in their home as they get older instead of going into an assisted living facility or, you know, being put into a care home.
Yeah.
It's allowing people to live out their years at home.
Right.
Now, technology is a great asset in this area. I mean, because we have telemedicine. If people need something,
Right.
we've developed cool stuff like
Right.
stoves that turn themselves off automatically.
Yes.
We've got minders and reminders.
Okay.
So, what are your thoughts? I mean,
Well,
what do you see? And what do we need to be doing?
One thing that you probably don't know about me is that I invented the first telemedicine. Back in 1989, I hold a patent on it.
Oh.
And that was to allow doctors to perform examinations without even being in the room with the patient or in the state.
Oh.
Okay, so that was
Now, this was in Alaska while you were in
No,
Alaska?
this was in Louisiana. I was working with a hospital group, and
Okay.
the owner of the hospital came to me and said, "Can you put it together?" And I did. And it was developed for prisons because the prisoners may lose their rights to freedom, but they don't lose their right to medical care. And so that was something that I did create. It was called Sterling Vision Systems. So, what do I think about seniors aging in place? I think it's the most important thing that we can think to do for our parents and our grandparents. And I brought my 102-year-old grandmother back to Hawaii with me a few years ago, and I had just adopted our son, who has 9 different medical conditions, and the trying to care for a 102-year-old woman who's in mental health, great, physical health, not so good. And
We should all be so lucky, by the way, yeah,
She
to
lived-
get to 102.
she lived to 104.
Wow.
Yeah, and totally cognizant of everything. She would sing with me, we'd play solitaire, you know, so it was a wonderful time. But at the end, I had to put her in a nursing home here. And I couldn't afford anybody to help me. And our son Jacob has cystic fibrosis, which is a very intense disease. He has to do therapy
Ongoing,
times,
right?
three times a day. He does about an hour, 3 times a day of intensive therapy. He wasn't supposed to be here past 4, and he's 25 years old, and he's a wonderful young man. If you see me waving on the street with a cute blonde kid, that's my son Jacob.
Okay.
And the AARP sponsored a conference recently, and they had all of us call all the legislators all at one time to get a bill passed, and it did pass, which will give $70 a day to caregivers of the elderly for them to stay in home. Waikiki, as I said, I was here in 1975. It was a much
Right,
younger
right,
group.
Right.
It is now aging. In the building that I live in, we have several homebound people living there. And they're in their 90s.
Really?
And yes, and they're living alone, and yet they're capable of going online and sending me articles or telling me, hey, I don't like this or whatever. And one woman, Jean Cox in our building, she is 90 years old, cannot get out of the house, and yet she's on the board of directors of our board, and just is super. So these are the kind of people that need companionship.
Right.
They need us to care for them.
Well, you know, it's one of the things is when you get older, you lose a lot of your friends, and
Right.
you know, it gets to be a very lonely time.
Right.
You know, so you need that.
And the
those-
kids move away.
Yeah, and sometimes, unfortunately, one of the realities of Hawaii is our children are raised for export.
Right.
You know, which is,
Right.
of course, another issue for me.
Right.
I feel like we need to be doing more to create opportunities so that our kids have an opportunity to come home
That's right.
and have well-paying positions and opportunities to build their families here. Because, of course, we want to be able to have grandkids, spoil them, and then give them back when they're tired and cranky.
Right.
Right, that's
I like that.
That's the right idea,
Works
right?
for me. Of course, having had 35 foster children, I'm kind of used to that, you know.
Well,
but-
yeah, and you adopted kids. My mother told me I was adopted. I think just about every day she told me I was adopted.
Did you
She
believe
says
her?
She said, "There's no way you came from this."
Well, we were told that our daughter was Pakistani or East Indian. And we recently did DNA, and she's Native American Indian.
Oh, okay.
Mixed with European. So, I mean,
Uh-huh.
we stopped talking about bindis, started talking about powwows. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
cute.
It
That's
is
really
cute.
cute. Yeah.
So, but you're not adopted.
Yeah, so, but when we talk about aging in place and we talk about how we can implement that, do you have any ideas or suggestions in terms of things that the legislature could be doing to facilitate aging in place?
Well, I think a lot of work has been done this year with the $70 a day payment. That really does allow people to get help, or their children can stay in the home and have a job right there taking care of mom or dad or both. And the other thing is that we need to consider, I think we talked about this, mother-in-law suites in some of the new housing.
Your mother-in-law, not mine. Yes.
My mother-in-law lives in Poland.
That's right.
My husband was born in Poland, so
Yeah.
go for it.
Yes.
She doesn't
So-
speak English either.
Yeah, there you go. So I think the in-law suites are a nice idea. They're built into the design of the structure.
Right.
And so some of those units have and can accommodate other folks living in there.
Right.
It's almost like building an AD, what they call an ADU, alternative dwelling unit or something like that. That's what
Okay.
they call them, ADUs. It's almost like building ADUs into the condos.
Yes, and I understand that some of the new development in Kaka'ako have already put out blueprints of this type of housing. And I think it's great. And I think it's expensive, but it's great.
Well, we do need to build, I believe, more workforce housing, housing for the people that live and work in the area. Now, I think one of the things, of course, the rail being sort of the third rail, one of those third rail topics, I think if we figure out a way to build an economic engine around the rail, the rail's coming. So the question is, how do we leverage the rail in ways that's good for us?
And what are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
my thoughts are that let the entrepreneurs loose, provide some sort of tax incentives, business incentives, financing, things like that, to let them go crazy and come up with novel ideas that will bring us into the 21st century, and let them loose, give them some incentives, and give them the tools legislatively to allow them to do things. If you have things like permits and planning that's getting in the way, figure out ways to fast track that.
Well, and that's part of the reason the homeless are still where they are, is because of all the permitting, all the planning, and the fact that the governor's office doesn't know what the mayor's office is doing. And heck, the city council doesn't know what the mayor's doing. And they can't get together. And if you just took politics out of it, had somebody who could mediate this for the government, take away a lot of the nonsense permitting. And also, I recently heard that Trevor Ozawa and Ann Kobayashi, who I've known for many years, are going to suggest that we put a 3-story parking lot at the zoo. And they're going to spend $500,000 to do a feasibility study. Well, Ann, Trevor, I can do your feasibility study for you, and I'll save you $500,000. You don't need it. I live right down there. We cannot support any more traffic down there. There's plenty of parking if it's not taken away by events. And I love the events, the triathlons and the charity walks and the parades. But that must be a historic site, I believe.
Do you think that we should be looking at other ways of moving people in that area, like such as trams, or should we be looking at other options or building more opportunities for people to bicycle in the area? Because one of the challenges is if you're a bicyclist, you feel like you're a human target.
You are.
You
are.
And perhaps maybe what we need to sort of figure out ways to have routes that are not commingled with automobiles.
Well, Chris, there has been a bicycle plan for 700 miles of bike paths for over 14 years.
But not all in Waikiki.
Not in Waikiki. 700 miles. I feel like that when I'm trying to get home.
Right.
And it's been funded for 14 years. And it has never progressed until recently with, of course, the very controversial South King bike path.
Well, it seems controversial because I think it's new, you
Right.
know, but
Right.
people are starting to, I see more people using it today.
I love it.
Uh-huh.
I think we should have bike paths all through the whole area and become less dependent. Now, the transportation department, I wish I could think of the gentleman's name, Mr. Formby or Forn?
You're asking the wrong person?
Okay.
Okay, but go ahead.
They are, well, Mark Garrity, who is a representative for the mayor, has presented to the Waikiki Neighborhood Board a grant that the city is receiving to have all electric buses. And
So would that would be quieter.
that's it. That's one of
would
the
be quieter,
major
right.
complaints in
Uh-huh.
the neighborhoods.
So we only have a couple minutes left. So I would like to talk a little bit and let you tell people about your campaign, how they can reach out to you, how they can contact you and support your campaign.
Okay.
So why don't you give us the elevator speech about how they can reach you and
Okay.
what they can do to help support your candidacy.
Well, Chris, first of all, thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.
Thank you so much. Folks, my name is Kathryn Henski, and I've loved Hawaii since I was a little girl. I came here in 1975. It wasn't all the development. Kalakaua was a two-way street, and I've seen the major changes, and I've saddened by the loss of places like Tahitian Lanai and the international marketplace. I'm saddened by it. I realize that Hawaii has to grow. I understand that. But I'd like you to have somebody who is not going to use rather controversial methods on our homeless. Have somebody who has a plan and solutions and it's done it before. And you can reach me at the moment at 281-635-5865. And I have a number for Hawaii also, and I'll be putting that up later. I'm in District 22. I
And
would
tell us about your
represent-
website. What's your website?
My website is letkathrynhenski.com. But it's District 22, which is Ala Moana, Waikiki, and a little bit of Kaka'ako.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, thank you again for appearing on Think Tech Hawaii, and
Thanks,
good luck with your
Chris.
campaign.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Leatham, and we'll see you next week right here on Think Tech Hawaii, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. Aloha.